One of the biggest challenges in Hearthstone is keeping the game fresh and fun in a stale meta. As we get closer and closer to a new set and a lot of cards actually rotating out of standard, I'm sure you've been playing against a lot of the same decks over and over and over again. And I've got great news for you. I've got 3 off-meta decks here that's going to keep Hearthstone fresh and fun. Now, if you're anything like me, you have to be able to win roughly about half of the games to be able to continue to have fun in Hearthstone. I don't think anybody really enjoys losing, no matter how much fun a deck is to play. So with these 3 decks that I'm going to be showing you, I do think that you can win roughly half of your games, and maybe even just a little bit more as you get better at playing them. And of course, it's going to depend on what you're playing against as well. Keeping in mind, though, do temper your expectations a little bit. You're not going to find some hidden gem here that's going to allow you to blow through the ladder. If these decks were really, really good, they wouldn't be off meta. Everyone would be playing them and trying to climb the ladder. Taking a look at the deck here, you're going to remember that one of the key cards in the deck is Snowfall Graveyard. We need to get this card in play before our death rattles start going off, if possible, just because we want to be able to get extra value out of those death rattles. And taking a look at the death rattle minions that we're going to be taking advantage of, we have, of course, the Scourge Illusionist. This is going to create extra minions in our hand. It's going to allow them to cost 4 less mana. Mana cheat is always good in Hearthstone. We're running only 1 copy of the Burning Blade Acolyte here. 1 is going to be enough for this card, but of course this is going to be able to allow us to generate those big 5/8 taunts. Big body to protect our health, but also it's a big body to be able to punch our opponent in the face. We're running a copy of Krakatoa here. Again, you don't necessarily mind hitting Krakatoa because of the claws that have rush, and they're going to be giving us weapons to be able to swing with as well. Again, we can swing face or we can make trades on the board as the situation may call for. Couple of copies of Masked Reveler. Again, this allows us to be able to just generate extra minions. As long as we still have minions in our deck, we're going to summon some additional 2/2 copies here. And again, you don't necessarily mind hitting crabs or burning acolytes or even Scourge Illusionists, because again, that's just where the value of the deck is going to be coming from. And you can really create some pretty impressive boards with this particular list. And you can see here, rounding it out, we do have Neptulon. If you can create a Neptulon, even if it's only the 2/2 version, it still has the potential to just do a lot of damage. It still has Wind Fury, and the colossal minions that go along with it are still going to be 4/2s. So again, if you get the Neptulon on the board in any form, you should be able to clear up your opponent's side of the board. And if they can't address this minion, you're going to be able to win next turn. Deck is pretty enjoyable. General Mulligan Guide for the deck here, we're going to want to keep the Snowfall Graveyard. We're also always going to want to keep Preparation, just because it combos so well with the Snowfall Graveyard. We're also going to be keeping the Sketchy Information here. So really just 3 cards that we're going to look for in the Mulligan. Again, that's going to be Preparation, Snowfall Graveyard, and Scourge Illusionist. We want to be able to find those cards. Once we have an ability to be able to get down and maybe proc some death rattles, we're going to want to make sure that we have that Snowfall Graveyard in play again so that we can generate that extra value. Next up on our list of off-meta decks that are going to be fresh and fun, we've got a version of Big Beast Hunter here. You're going to notice that this version runs a lot of secrets as well as Vandar Stormpike. So I'm sure you know that with Vandar Stormpike, when you play this, all of these big expensive minions are going to get significantly cheaper by a factor of 3 mana, which is going to be really, really good for the game plan. And then you can see we include just the standard Big Beast package that we've seen from other iterations of this list. We're running Wing Commander Ikman, King Crush, Mountain Bears, of course Hydralodon, as well as Pet Collectors and Rat King. So you are going to notice a Shar and Saber not in this version of the list, specifically because Vandar Stormpike, we can't have any minions that cost 4 or less if we're going to be running Vandar, which is really where the secret package come in. So the secret package can allow us some early game just to be able to stay safe. And then once we get our big beasts online, we're going to be able to win the game from there. Hero card, again, this is just a really, really strong card. Definitely something that we want to have in this deck. Again, be very, very careful with crafting. I would recommend that you not craft any of these 3 decks if you don't have the cards that are in them, simply because so many of these cards are going to rotate, and likely these decks will not be a thing after the next standard rotation. Certainly the hero card here, very powerful, but also very, very limited time left in standard before it continues. Basic Mulligan Guide for this Big Beast Hunter deck. Of course, we're going to want to keep Vandar because it's just a really big power spike. In addition to that, we would want to keep our Dunbaldar Bunkers, be able to draw our secrets and keep those cheap. I would also likely keep Harpoon Gun. It's going to allow us to be able to remove early minions on our opponent's side of the board, as well as potentially fish for these big beasts and make them cheaper. And then we could also keep Wild Spirits here. Wild Spirit's just a very, very good card for Hunter, generating 2 minions, potentially at the 3/1 with Rush to be able to address the board. You have the Taunt, and then you also have the Stag that's going to give us a weapon again, just to keep the board under control. So early on in the game, we're going to want to control our opponent's side of the board, make sure they don't develop anything too threatening. And then as the game progresses, we're going to be able to really hit our power spikes, usually beginning at least around turn 5. If we miss on the Vandar Stormpike on turn 5, Pet Collector just ends up being a really, really insane play with the imported Tarantula, as well as the Rat King potentially going to be able to come out. So deck is really fun. And again, just a different take on Big Beast Hunter. You can definitely win some games with this deck. Last and unfortunately least on our list is going to be a Fire Enraged Warrior deck. Warrior has been written off for many, many months as just being bad. And unfortunately, the class is bad, but it's not as bad as people necessarily want you to think it is. Enraged Warrior, this list is actually pretty good, and again, I believe that you'll be able to win at least half of your games, if not a few more. You could potentially climb ranks with it, and you can catch your opponent off guard when they see you playing Warrior. Kind of gives you that extra feeling when you're beating your opponents with what's widely looked at as the worst class in the game. Taking a closer look at the list here, again, it's going to be very similar to Enraged Warrior that you've seen in the past, but there are going to be some key differences here. So you're going to notice, of course, we're still running the weapons. They're just a really key part of the Enraged Warrior set, but we're no longer running the 3/2 minion that's going to actually be drawing those. This deck is a bit more focused on the fire synergies that are in the Warrior deck. So you're going to be seeing the Sun Fury Champion. It's going to deal damage every time a fire spell is played. Embers of Strength is going to be one of the fire spells that we're going to play. It's going to summon a couple of 1/2s on the cheap, and potentially with Mana Thirst 6, they could even be 2 4s. And then we're also going to be running Light of the Phoenix as additional fire spells here. This is just going to be card draw. We never want to pay full mana for this, but you are going to have the ability to potentially be able to draw cards significantly cheaper than the 4 mana. That is the base cost of the card. And then we're also running Thore Belore. Again, just with the fire synergy package, you can get this down. It's got Rush, and then as you play a fire spell, it's going to be able to come back. You're also going to notice Hawkstrider Ranchers in this list. Again, just being able to buff minions. It's going to allow a little bit more room for those minions to take damage and get buffed as we swing the axe, or potentially as those minions are attacking with Rokara here. So, plays exactly the same way as the deck always did. Again, I think this list is just a little bit better than some of the earlier lists that we saw. General Mulligan Guide for this deck, we're going to want to keep our early 1-drop stuff. That's actually going to include the location. This is a perfectly fine keep. We're also keeping Sun Fury Champion as well as Warsong Envoy. Anima Extractor is also going to be a keep. And likely we could also keep Hawkstrider Rancher and Imbued Axe. All of that is going to be just fine. You can see this deck is weighted to have most of the cards available in the early game just because of the cheap mana cost on those. So we want to be able to hit the board early. We would like to be able to equip our weapon. Again, we don't necessarily care if it's infused or not. Infused is better, but we don't want to hold the weapon in our hand until it's guaranteed to be infused. And then we want to be able to potentially take value trades on the board to damage our own minions. We can also damage our own minions with things like Cruel Taskmaster, Sanguine Depths, or even just casting a fire spell with the Sun Fury Champion. And then as we swing our weapon, it's going to buff those damaged minions. So if you have damaged minions on the board, make sure you attack with your weapon first before you use those minions to attack into your opposing hero, simply because they are going to get a buff and they'll be able to do a little bit more damage if you swing with the weapon first. So important to keep something like that in mind. That's going to do it. That is 3 off-meta decks that's going to keep Hearthstone fresh and fun for you. I'm Uncorrupt. Thank you for watching.